there, I'm Una, and I'm a unicorn. And do you know what unicorns are bad at? Booking meetings. Except for me, of course. My secret? I use Cirrus Insight to schedule all my meetings. That's Cirrus, spelled C-I-R-R-U-S, Cirrus Insight. Cirrus Insight takes all the hassle out of booking and scheduling my meetings, cutting the amount of steps involved to half, if not more. Now, instead of a 43-message deep email thread where everyone's trying to find the right time to meet, I can just send them to a link on my calendar page. From there, anyone who wants to meet with me can see when I'm available and schedule a meeting. It's magic. Like me. And I should know a thing or two about magic. I'm a unicorn after all. But wait, there's more. Do you use Salesforce? If you do, Cirrus Insight can also remove most of the manual data entry involved with updating and maintaining your Salesforce environment. To learn more and start your 14-day free trial, visit cirrusinsight.com. That's Cirrus, spelled C-I-R-R-U-S, cirrusinsight.com. And tell them Una sent you.
Hello, everyone. I'm your host and Salesforce MVP, Christy Campbell. Joining me on the show today is Christopher Hopper, Salesforce recruiter at Empiristaff. You can find him on LinkedIn at The CRM Tech Recruiter and on Twitter at The CRM Recruiter. Today, we're going to talk about both working your LinkedIn profile and working with a recruiter. So stay tuned. Hello, and welcome to Serious Insights for Admins. I'm your host, Christy Campbell, the senior admin here at Cirrus Insight, and I'm joined today by the CRM recruiter, Chris Hopper. Hi, Chris.
Hi, Christy.
And we're going to be jumping into LinkedIn profile tips and working with a recruiter, and just seemed like a great way to kick off a new year. So, Chris, can you tell me a little bit about how you got started working in recruiting?
Sure. Thank you, Christy, for having me on the show today. Chris Hopper out of Houston. I've been recruiting the Salesforce space for a little bit over 5 years now. My career is one that's pretty unique for probably most recruiters. I had been into IT CRM delivery for about 15 years prior to getting into recruiting. And so I was previously an architect and a technical PM and a business analyst and a developer doing all things around Siebel CRM for the first 15 years of my career. Was an independent consultant for a number of years. And then decided to leave the day-to-day delivery and get into the recruiting. I had a friend of mine who ran a recruiting company here in Houston, and he had staffed me on projects. And then he asked me if I wanted to work on CRM and Salesforce because it was a hot technology, and I had the foundational understanding about CRM and was able to kind of train myself around Salesforce and be able to kind of break into the market, try to build a brand around myself, was able to network back with Accenture, which is one of the companies I worked with for a number of years. And they had given me some Salesforce dev roles to fill, and it was very challenging. And so I knew there's going to be a lot of opportunity out there for years to come when it came to Salesforce talent, just because of the amount of demand that has grown over the years there. And the scarcity of finding good Salesforce working professionals.
That's awesome. It's a really unique perspective, I think, of understanding truly the roles that you're trying to fill.
Right. And, I was a career counselor for a number of years at Accenture. Part of the role was being a manager there. And so it really resonated with me to help those that were kind of up and coming and trying to figure out their career paths and having meaningful conversations with them about what they can do to help them make themselves achieve certain goals and more marketable in the job scene. And so that's another way that I'm able to give back as a recruiter, not just direct placement for clients, but also helping the newcomers figure out their path and their walk of their Salesforce careers and review resumes, maybe do mock interviews and help them connect with others just to help them make it a little bit more successful than they can be.
Yeah, it's a great point. One of the things I really enjoy about you is your LinkedIn feed, right? I think you do a lot of great work to get people thinking and promote content instead of kind of just, barfing offers into LinkedIn messages, which I feel like is a lot of what I get, especially after, you get a certification or, you've got certain milestones. For me, becoming an MVP, right, really increased not the relationships, right, but the just kind of the offers coming in from left field, from things that don't really actually apply to what I do. So you mentioned kind of both. So how do you have any recommendations about finding the right recruiter, or who, kind of at what step in your journey you should be looking to work with a recruiter?
Yeah, and it's different for everybody. A lot of people, if they have a position and they're happy, there's no sense of really, they probably feel like there's no sense of really building relationships with recruiters because there's no need to do that at that time. But, there's an old saying that says, dig your well before you need it when it comes to building relationships and having relationships with recruiters or hiring managers or those in the ecosystem. And so, it's always good to say, hey, Chris, I'm not looking right now, but here's where I'm currently at. 6 months or 12 months down the road, let's have a conversation because I think I'm going to be looking for something different. I don't really see my career going the right direction long term here. And having those checkpoints with recruiters, because you never know, they could have an opportunity that's sitting on their desk waiting to be filled. And it's a lot about timing, being in the right place at the right time. I've been able to fill positions and getting people to a better salary, to a better position, to better skills, to be able to grow their career because they had pinged me and I just happened to have a position that was a perfect fit for them. That came across my desk 3 or 4 days prior to that. And so, I know we're all busy with the day-to-day jobs and personal lives and all that, but I think if you can have a handful of recruiters that's in your back pocket that you can rely on and build relationships with over the long run, I think you'll see that's advantageous for you long term.
I think it's interesting. I remember when I was getting started and decided to fully move into a Salesforce role, and I kind of sent my information to a recruiter, had an initial conversation, and almost like thought that was the end of it, thought I was in and I was going to just get a role. So I think looking back now, I can kind of see the difference between, internal recruiters that are filling more of your typical roles where I think more often when companies are reaching out to someone like you, it's for something more specific or something that's more difficult for them to fill themselves. Is that right?
That's exactly right. And then I try to tell that to the newcomers because they see my title as being a recruiter, that I can help everybody and anyone. And unfortunately, I wish it worked that way, but it doesn't. We're an expense to a company. And then typically companies don't come to external recruiters unless they have to, right? So they have their internal talent acquisition department. They may have their internal HR. They may have the hiring managers themselves doing the recruiting for the company. And so the only time that they're going to come to me for help is if they've been searching for months on end, haven't had any success. They posted a LinkedIn, they posted various job boards, they put it on Indeed, and nothing's coming back that is a close enough match for them to make the hire.
Right.
And that's when I get pulled in and have to utilize my time and energy to be able to find somebody that they can't find. And it's interesting within the Salesforce space because there's a lot of open opportunities right now, right? But there's still these unique skill sets, whether you're talking about field service lightning or CPQ or the technical architects or sometimes a senior admin that have specific products that are in the org that they want to have someone have experience on. And not everyone has that, right? And so it's up to me to kind of go through the trenches, have conversations, look at LinkedIn profiles, review resumes, and hopefully find something that's a lot closer to what they're looking for versus what they're finding on their own.
Yeah, I think it's interesting too to remember that those hiring managers, that aren't focused solely on Salesforce or primarily on Salesforce day to day, I think it's a good reminder to question some of the things that might be in those postings. I know I read somewhere about women won't apply for a job if they don't meet, 100% of the criteria versus men kind of have more of a, sure, I can figure that out kind of attitude, which I think it's good to keep in mind, they may not know these words that they're asking you about, even in an interview, right? Can you build flows, right? Like they're kind of trying to check some boxes that may have been communicated and may not fully understand exactly what they're asking about until you get into the more technical conversations later on in the interview.
Right. And that's another point that the recruiter can be a value added piece of the puzzle, because if I have a conversation with a hiring manager or internal talent acquisition or HR, and they give me the scenarios about what they're looking for, I know enough about the technology to be able to go into that extra degree of specification and technical Q&A with the candidate to make sure they have the skill set that the client is looking for versus just having, keyword searches, right? A lot of times that's all that matters when it comes to sourcing resumes. But when you're using an external recruiter, there should be another level of value added service that comes with that. And usually I provide a brief summary about why I think this candidate is a particular fit based on this logical conversation I had about their experience and about the apex triggers that they've built or the flows that they've built or whatever the case may be to help show exactly why this person is qualified.
That's great. And I'm assuming too, sometimes people are coming to you to fill roles and are, looking for, an admin that has written triggers, right? Or like kind of helping to right size some of those expectations around what those skills really should be at different levels.
Yeah, I get pulled in for more of just consultation, right? Just a case of where I've been and been a consultant. And so I'm able to take those soft skills and apply those to the recruiting space. And whether it's about salary conversations, around skill set, around industries, whatever the case may be, I enjoy having those conversations with clients or even not clients, just random people that find me on LinkedIn, just talk to a little bit more about the Salesforce space and how to help them fill positions because maybe their job description is too generic. And I say, well, I'm going to give you a little bit of insight that it may take you 3, 6, 9 months to fill that position the way that you've written it. Maybe you want to make some of these as nice to haves versus must haves to hopefully get some additional traction on this.
Interesting. So you mentioned that, primarily from the sourcing side, you're working with, more advanced kind of placement levels because that's what companies bring in a recruiter for. Right. In terms of the new people that do reach out to you, kind of what recommendations do you have for them to make them seem attractive to those hiring managers?
Yeah, I'm a big fan. I've preached on this for years about showcasing your work and showcasing your skills because certifications and badges can only get you so far, right? And so when everyone else has the admin cert or the platform app builder cert and our Trailhead Rangers, right, then the bar is set at the same level for everybody. Where you differentiate yourself is being able to build custom apps on the dev platform and be able to showcase that, whether that's writing an article about it, doing some YouTube videos, things to be creative, because those are things that are very unique to your analytical and creativity skills that are going to differentiate you versus a standard certification or badges. Things that everybody has access to doesn't show any kind of differentiation. And there's been plenty of success stories around this that people that have been able to showcase their work and build some specific apps that may pertain to their personal life or maybe their current position somewhere else, not doing Salesforce or maybe something else that they were doing in the past. They apply standard Salesforce principles to building custom apps and being able to showcase that. It shows that you're willing to put yourself on the line, be a little bit uncomfortable with your abilities. And I think a lot of employers want to see that in somebody.
Yeah, I definitely think the ability to add badges directly to your LinkedIn from Trailhead is a mixed bag. I feel like when it first started and there was only a handful, right, it was a little more, early adopter. But now I think it's so prevalent that focusing on super badges or, projects, kind of some more involved things can be helpful, but you want to make sure that there's not too much noise. But I agree. I definitely think that showing, especially because you can get a dev org, right. You can build an experience cloud community, right? So that you could walk through something with someone on an interview or link them to a site to engage with something that you've done. I know Trailhead is great about providing examples and kind of guiding you through those processes, but I agree too that whether it's something in your personal life or from your current role or your last role, right? How could you have built something that would make it better? And being able to talk through that, I think not only showcases your Salesforce skills, but also your, commitment to trying to enhance user experience and, those soft skills that you want in your admin in terms of taking requirements from yourself and, building something that you can show to someone, I think is
exactly
really helpful.
And I think a lot of times we just have resistance because we don't think it is very meaningful. But before I got into recruiting, when I was a hiring manager, those that brought something other than their pretty face and a resume usually got to the top of the pecking order when it came to making a decision because they had either written documentation they brought with them or they had something electronically to show us. it's a different way to start a conversation and just show your true self, right? Other than just talking about just job experiences and your resume and certifications. It just gives you another flavor to bring to the table that brings a little personality to the game.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting. I think the perception is that it's the experienced people that are writing the blogs and doing YouTube, but really, there's always someone that's less knowledgeable than you, right? You started last week, they started today, right? So I definitely think that the learning journey and figuring certain things out, even for me, right? There's new features that have come out that just haven't come on my radar, right? So if you're working through something new, like restriction rules or something that's newer, that's still valuable and interesting, even though you may not consider yourself an authority.
Exactly. I mean, if you just think about, if I can get one person to appreciate this, that should be enough for you want to do it, right? A way of giving back and getting notified and getting noticed in the ecosystem, right? I mean, I post every day. It's become a habit for me to do it. And I've been adding sketches and drawings just to make things a little bit unique. And, at the end of the day, it's like, hopefully at least one person resonates with this particular post for the day, because that's what it was for. It was not intended for all those naysayers who don't care about it, who just scroll past it and didn't resonate with them. That's fine. Today's message wasn't for them.
Right.
It was for those that appreciated it. And so that's kind of just a mental piece that I've been able to come to terms with. But I think the same thing that what I do, and by no means am I an artist and can draw very well, but I'm working on it and hopefully I'll get better over time. That same thought process is what I like to try to also show to the community, that they can do the same thing on their apps or whatever they want to do that maybe they have a lower resistance around or not sure how good it's going to be. But as you do it more, you build up some momentum behind you and you build up some more skills. And then eventually you'll find that you'll end up landing that position that you're shooting for.
And I think so much of what I remember about taking my first admin cert, which has been a few number of years, but I had been an admin for a little while since then. And so I went back to when I did this thing, did I get an error? Like, how did I end up having to do that? Right. So there's, to me, just getting in and building those things can help reinforce the things that you're, book learning, right, that you may be experiencing, which again is then translates to what you're going to be doing in the role, right?
Exactly. And the one thing that I just told someone yesterday, if you're working on a pro bono project or doing some volunteer work, at the end of the week, debrief with yourself about the things that you worked on, right? Because you need to be able to take those things and be able to add it to your resume, add it to your LinkedIn profile. I think much of the time we're so busy doing that we don't spend enough time reflecting, right? And to be able to reflect on those things, because those are the things that you've done well and you've shown value. Why not be able to take that stuff that you've done and be able to translate it on paper or your LinkedIn profile, maybe even post about it to be able to show others their capabilities?
It's really interesting. I remember back in the day when I printed out some pages of like little sections of like things to remind that I had a phone interview, that I got to spread them on the desk and kind of was referencing stuff about myself, which seems awkward, but you don't necessarily remember the project on the fly, right? Or the challenge. I run into things I've done in an org I don't remember doing. So
yeah, exactly. And like, even if you have a list of questions that you want to ask at the end, I mean, showing that you prepared and you've done your research and you reviewed the company and you have some questions and big deal. You're looking at your notes. I mean, at least you have some notes with you and you have something to showcase versus just kind of trying to remember it all in your head, which doesn't really, I carry a notepad everywhere I go. I think that's just the way that my mind works. And I don't care if it's old fashioned or not, because it works for me. And I think it worked for anyone else as well.
So you mentioned the keywords as a kind of a thing. Do you have any, quick recommendations of, based on the tools that recruiters can use on LinkedIn specifically, to kind of differentiate? I know we mentioned that you shouldn't use LinkedIn kind of as your only differentiation mechanism, but to kind of make your profile stand out.
Yeah. One thing that I'm seeing on profiles is if you're currently working, a lot of times you don't have your summary about the work that you're doing in your current position. You have summaries that you've made in the past for past positions, but let's say you've been somewhere for 6, 12, 18 months, and that's just blank and you just have the position listed and not any of the responsibilities that you're doing. If you're going into the job market soon, you might want to go ahead and start updating that part of the job responsibility that you currently have. And sometimes we just forget about it because we're currently on a position and we just haven't updated our profiles since the last time we landed a new role.
Right.
But something to think about is also keeping it up to date, I guess, is my point on your LinkedIn profile. As far as keyword searches, I think a lot of it's very point as far as what we have on our side, and the LinkedIn recruiter tool that I use, where we can search by location, if it's full-time or contract, how many years of experience. I don't always use titles anymore because a lot of people may not have Salesforce admin as a job title. They could be called 1,000 other things. So what I'll do is usually leave the title blank in my search and just do keyword searches, right? And so whether it's around flows or reports or validation rules or Apex and triggers and API and REST, things like that, that's usually where I'm zoning in on, because I think I'll get a better pull back as far as candidates that have the skill set that I'm looking for and may just not have a title match that necessarily this new company that I'm working with matches the particular candidate, because their title becomes something totally different.
And that is looking at keywords in job descriptions of the history of jobs that you've had?
Yes. So what that does is in LinkedIn Recruiter, if I do a keyword search, just going through all your profile basically and looking for to see if you have those skills listed either in your summary section or under each of the job descriptions that you've worked at, or even on your skills section, right, of your skills and endorsement section. Any of those areas, it looks for that keyword search. And when the profiles come back to me, each profile I look at, it highlights where those keywords are located within an individual's profile.
Interesting. I also, I think personally, the headline to me is underutilized because it can auto-populate, right? Just like in Salesforce, right? When something auto-populates, it's easier to ignore.
Right.
I think changing that up a little bit to give it some personality, I think can be, especially if you're looking at a list of people and kind of that's the first thing that you see. I think that can be
for sure. I like the headlines. I like the creativity. I see some very unique summaries as well. Because technologists get inundated by recruiters quite often, right? And a lot of recruiters don't look at the full profile of somebody. And a lot of times, I'm sure you've seen this and many others have, is getting pitched a position that has nothing to do with your background, right? And I saw one guy's profile. He was a developer. And he said, and he had a pretty long diatribe as far as his summary goes. And the last line says, if you read this far and you can write down, you can in your reach out to me, say monkeys like bananas, then I know that you've read my profile and that I'll respond back to you. Right. And so it's just a unique way for him to make sure that if he doesn't see that in someone that reached out to him, they knows that recruiters are just generically spamming him with job descriptions or job positions that aren't really applicable to his skill set. I'm a little bit different. I don't go for the masses. I try to spend a lot of time on the profiles and making sure that it's a pretty close fit to what I'm looking for. And then even when I reach out to somebody, I can say, hey, Christy, I'm not sure if this is a good fit for you. I think it is based on my analysis of your LinkedIn profile and the job description. What do you think? Right? I try not to make any false assumptions when I reach out to people that are actively looking, because sometimes, your profile may be a little bit not as transparent to me, and maybe I can't pull out what I'm looking for. So I'll go back to an individual to ask them if they meet these particular skill sets, just to make sure we're on the same page.
It's a good point too. I think the volume piece, I think, there's nothing wrong with saying no, thank you, you're not interested, right? Or saying that doesn't really apply to what I'm looking for, right? Giving that feedback, I think, is having some grace, I think, from the recruiter side, of hopefully they're trying their best,
Yeah.
But
and I can say, okay, I understand, Chrissy, thanks for letting me know. If you don't mind telling me what a good fit looks like, then maybe something will come across my desk in the near future that I can present to you that's a better fit. Like I always try to keep the dialogue open a little bit. If I feel like there's the ability to help somebody who's willing to help me help them, so to speak.
Right.
Sometimes I get ignored, or sometimes it's a done deal and they close the conversation, which is fine too. That's just part of the process when it comes to recruiting. But I think if you're a job candidate and someone reaches out to you and you look at their profile, recruiter's profile, this is something I also advocate for, is look at the recruiter's profile. Do they seem active? Do they seem like they're giving back? Do they seem like they're a contributor to the ecosystem? Is it someone that you think would be worth your time to form a small relationship with and have a conversation with? If so, then maybe you want to say, hey, Chris, sorry, this position is a good fit for me, but here's what I'm looking for instead. Right. Now, if you feel like you're getting spammed and they're ticking you off because of how bad the reach out was to you, then maybe you don't want to waste your time. But I think in these other situations, it may be worth it long term.
Yeah, good. Circle back. Have a few recruiter connections in your pocket so that you are prepared. Just like you can't just do the networking when it's time to get a new job, right? You've got to kind of build that foundation.
That's right. And LinkedIn and Twitter and the social network gives you the opportunity to do that. And I'm not saying you got to be so insane about it and post 3 times a day or even daily like me, but every once in a while, a few times a month, maybe just get out there and like some people's posts or post something of yourself, just to kind of stay active, I guess, instead of just waiting until 2-3 years go by and say, hey, everybody, I'm looking for a new position. Can you help me? It's like you haven't built any, you really haven't
credibility.
I don't say earned because that's kind of being mean about it, but you kind of have to give a little bit to get a little.
Right. And I think that goes back to the kind of personal branding conversations around, building yourself up as a helper, a sharer, versus just coming in when you need money, Yeah.
Yeah. And then sometimes that's how we get looked down on recruiters as well, because at the end of the day, we're in sales, right? Recruiting is a sales position. And the thing that my mission over the last 5+ years is to try to remove the bad juju that's around sales, because a lot of people don't appreciate sales and recruiting, especially when they get spammed and it's a waste of their time.
Right.
And so I can just do what I can do that I can think of creatively, from a creative side, to be able to show that not all recruiters are bad, not all of them are sales and just commission driven. At the end of the day, it's about trying to figure out ways to help those that are looking for help.
I like it. And again, I love that you are sharing content and kind of really staying in touch with the Salesforce pulse, I shall say, which brings me to our ad minute segment. So when you, obviously not as an admin, but when you're taking a minute for yourself to kind of keep up with what's going on with Salesforce, have you read something or seen something interesting recently that you would recommend?
Well, I just read that Shannon Tran posted the developer checklist. I think it was last week about best practices. Really, and that I bookmarked that. I think that is a great up-to-date checklist around development, because I used to be a developer, so I still try to follow Apex and understand the most I can around LWC and what's evolving around Salesforce technology. And the post that she made, she's an architect for Salesforce, and that checklist was, I think, a great, especially for those who are newcomers, to be able to use as kind of the gospel for them when they're developing Apex, to go by and utilize and make sure they're developing the best capacity that they can. Apex Hours, we all know Apex Hours. I've been a creator there before. They constantly put on good work from the community there. Automation Hour is another good one. I think all the Salesforce Ben's weekly articles as well. There's so much diligent information out there. The thing that I also advise with newcomers is, you got to make sure you spend your time wisely. At the end of the day, if all you're doing is consuming information, it can be a little overwhelming. And then I think it can cause your head to spin and not sure what direction to go in, especially when you're looking for a new position. That I think you need to zone in and really those core admin skills, especially for the newcomer admins that are trying to get the foot in the door. Right. So those are the things that you should focus on and not worry about some of these bells and whistles that Salesforce puts out in their seasonal releases and kind of all these other things that are being talked about, because it can cause your mind to get distracted, right? And not allow you to focus on things that you need to focus on.
Yeah, it's an interesting piece too that I'm not a developer, right? But I cloud admins. In reading Shannon's post on the Salesforce blog, it's interesting to just see the other side of what people are doing and what developers are thinking of, and have some grace when you're working on projects. And as we start getting further and further into flow, kind of operating like triggers, right? Things that you want to think about with, bulkification and all those kinds of things.
Exactly. That's exactly right. I mean, that's a great point, Christy, as far as some of the things that Shannon wrote about can be applied, at least the thinking can be applied to the declarative side of the house as well, right? Having someone peer review your flow, for example, and making sure, write your variables and things like that. So there's a lot of things that, don't let, because it has Apex around it or has code around the topic of it, don't think that some of these principles and core foundational areas can't be applied to the declarative context. I think for sure they can be.
Yeah. For me, I caught up on the Buzzard blog with Keir Bowden's blog. He did a year in review, and it's just nice to look back at, he's in London. So, talking about London's calling and some of their developer user group meetings there, but just seeing kind of the different topics. And he posts a lot about, again, developer topics, but things that can kind of be still interesting. So I enjoyed reading about his year and finally getting a haircut after months of quarantine. And so that was my admin this week. Cool. Thank you so much for joining us and helping us get started on a new year. If someone's looking to work with a recruiter or looking for a new role, or really just spice up their own LinkedIn maybe, and kind of finding their identity in the Salesforce space, I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, thank you, Christy, for having me. It's been a pleasure talking about this subject. It's really something that's near and dear to my heart. For any of those that are interested in connecting with me on LinkedIn, by all means, I look forward to making those connection requests. And I can help you review your resume, do a mock interview, look at your LinkedIn profile, talk about positions, talk about situations that you've been in. Just had someone reach out to me yesterday. They have a position that they were offered, and now it's stalled, and they're not sure if they should go in a different direction and look for another offer somewhere else, or continue to wait for this company to get back to them. So those are kind of situations that I get run into, and they just ask for my opinion if they're doing the right thing. And a lot of times I think if we just have an opportunity to vent out our frustrations or some of the stuff we're working on, it makes us feel better at the end of the day. So by all means, I'm an open door. Love to have those conversations if you need someone to turn to.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you, Christy.
Thank you, everyone, for listening to another episode of Serious Insights for Admins. Don't forget to get your 14-day free trial and free yourself from the drudgery of manual data entry. Start now by visiting cirrusinsight.com. That's Cirrus, CIRRUS, insight.com. And I'll see you next time.